Whenever I answer the phone, I'm like, hello.
What pissed you off?
It's a great argument to have.
I love my mom, but I think she's half crazy for doing that.
How dare you?
Do you work with your girlfriend, Mark? Or your wife, Mark?
I keep them separated. Sometimes I call people, they don't answer the phone. I'm like,
Wrong number, click.
Well, he's not that smart. But sometimes he sounds like he knows what he's doing.
yeah.
Go.
Therefore, you're an ass, and I don't want to talk to you anymore.
Yeah, but what do we know?
Welcome, everyone. This is What Do We Know? I'm Mark.
And I'm Mike. Hey, you know what? We can't screw it up when there's only two of us.
Yeah. Man, this show's already going great without Jeff here.
So, yeah, no Jeff today. Jeff had some form of explosion with a toilet. I think he had a serious turd that blocked the pipe. And
pressure does build up in a toilet if you don't clean it every once in a while.
And it flooded his entire place.
Of course, the reason might have happened because I told Jeff to snake the drain, and he might just clogged it up with more snakes. I'm not really sure what's going on there.
Well, it was something to do with water, so you can either choose to believe my explanation or, Jeff, I'm sure will come on here next week and tell some fabrication of some sort. Whatever.
Okay, so Mike, I sent you a picture. I'm not exactly sure I want to show the viewers. I might just attach it in the link below or something like that.
Okay, so there's how it doesn't go as well without Jeff here.
Yeah, Jeff, we need you to come back. I don't know what I'm doing.
All right, so I got to look at this picture.
Okay. So what you're looking at is a picture of the Berenstain Bears. Now, when you were a kid, did you used to read the Berenstain Bears?
Oh, sure.
Yeah?
Yep, of course. I read them to my kids now.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me just give some background information. The Berenstain Bears is a children's book series created by Jan and Stan Bernstein, right? There's only one problem. And if you look at the picture, it's pretty obvious what the problem is, especially, Mike, if you read the books to your kids. So look at the picture and tell me if you can figure it out.
What is the problem?
Now, when I saw this, I was for sure there was nothing wrong. And it just blew my mind when I found out the answer.
So I'm seeing, well, we definitely need to post this picture now since I've stared at it for a solid 10 seconds. Nobody listening can see this thing.
Right.
So it's the title of this book is The Berenstain Bears in the Messy Room.
Mm-hmm.
And Stan and Jan Berenstain down at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And it shows, so there's two bears, and one's supposed to be a boy, one's supposed to be a girl. Really, now that I'm really studying this, they kind of look exactly the same in the face.
Just like a bow, just a difference.
Yeah, right. Just they're wearing different colors, stereotypical boy-girl clothing.
Mm-hmm.
Mom is in her nightgown, which, by the way, she never gets out of. She must have a really laid-back life.
Yeah, you know what I always found really weird about this series is the brother bear's name is Brother Bear. And the sister bear's name is called Sister Bear. And you meet other people, and they'll call them the exact same thing. Their actual name is Brother and Sister and Mama. I mean, that's just a really strange society when it's okay if you just name people by the relatives by their actual title.
Well, people name their kids weird stuff all the time now, so it's not that strange.
But I mean, think of when Sister and Brother Bear become adults and have kids. Their kids will be calling them Brother and Sister.
Yeah. Well, like in Kentucky, I guess that's okay. That's what they say anyway.
All right, so I had you look at this picture long enough, and I'm going to
Yeah.
reveal the answer.
Okay.
There is no such thing as Berenstain Bears.
There are. I'm looking at them on the cover of this book.
There's no such thing because it's the Berenstain Bears. Stain. There's never been a Berenstain Bears. It has these books are altered. The picture you're looking at is altered to say Berenstain. But as a kid, and the books that you read to your kids, if you go and look at it, will say Berenstain Bears. You can check
Hmm.
on the web. And I didn't believe it for a very long time because
Well, I'm going to check it up right now.
I was 100% sure it was Berenstain Bears. I thought I watched a cartoon called the Berenstain Bears. I thought I read the books called the Berenstain Bears.
Huh.
It's all a
Okay.
delusion.
It is a delusion. I'm looking at it right now.
And I tried to use the word Berenstain as many times as I could. Now, you might argue I was trying to throw you off. But if I said, hey, I used to watch this cartoon called The Simpsons. The Simpsons was a TV show, and you would be
Right.
like calling me out because that's wrong. But
Right.
Berenstain, I mean, this is probably a book you read sometime this week.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, they have, I don't know how many of them. Well, when you were talking about the sister bear, like we have the one where she was born.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't know it goes back that far in the mythos.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it sure does. They go to the moon in one of them. Like, that's a weird thing. I'm not sure how brother and sister bear became certified astronauts at the age of 6 or whatever they are, but they
Right.
did. So yeah, that's a weird thing there. Why do you know why that is that they changed
Well,
that?
some people think it's sort of like the Mandela effect, where people thought he died in prison. And they're like, no, I remember like reading the newspapers. I remember hearing of his death. And of course, Mandela is now dead. So if someone's like, oh, Mandela's dead. No, that's true now. But when he was still alive, people would still believe that he was like killed when he wasn't. In fact,
Hmm.
he came the first. I don't know. They're not presidents, I don't think, in South Africa, but like the first
Prime
prime
Minister.
minister or something.
I don't know.
First black prime minister. I'm not really exactly sure what it is, but even it was this very significant role, and this was way after he was in prison. So it's sort of one of the things. Like I wrote this. Actually, my wife wrote this on Facebook, and my mother wrote back saying, "No, I'm pretty sure it's Berenstain Bears." And it's like there's no way to like convince her, like, oh, like she doesn't use the internet very well, but like it's not one of those things you can argue with people. That's something that they believe is true.
Hmm. Well,
So
I wonder what happened to like why America just sort of picked up Berenstain Bears and ran with it. Like, I wonder how that became a thing.
well, I mean, I think that's one of those things that Berenstain, like a stain ending name, is less common than Steen. So like think of all the people that you may know, or a lot of people with Jewish names or something like that might have a Steen. So you automatically hear the Steen, even if somebody's saying Stain. Like they sort of sound similar.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Because I was just baffled by it.
Yeah, it is kind of surprising that, like I said, after reading those books a multitude of times, and just my whole life, like I remember those cartoons were on when I was a kid, for crying out loud, and it was always Berenstain Bears.
Yeah, it's crazy. So I guess this is my funny segue into a more serious topic.
All right.
And my serious topic is um, the Bible. And I don't want to get people upset being, too religious or whatnot. But some things in the Bible, especially the Old Testament, it's pretty messed up. And I think most Christians know that there's a lot of things that are messed up in the Old Testament, but like the more you think about some of the stories that they were proud of, these are like things that happen or supposedly happen, and they wrote it down like, no, this is something we got to tell our kids. Like, this is the good stuff. And I was thinking, I mean, I know at a different age they have their reasons for believing things. Like I mean, back 50 years ago or 100 years ago, you have your reasons to be racist, and it's not that it's good that they were racist, but it was more justified at the time. So I understand that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still pretty messed up, right? So my example that really got to me was after during Exodus. What happens now? We know that Pharaoh denied Moses 3 times. Moses caused plagues, and then he split the water in half and walked through, and then they wandered for 40 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And 40 years is a long time to wander such a short distance, because when you look at a map, you're like, what the hell were they like? They're walking in circles. What the hell were they doing for 40 years?
They're just slowly meandering is all they're.
Well,
I don't walk very fast generally either. So,
yeah, there's a lot of people. Maybe
And
you try to go anywhere with a lot of people. Like, oh yeah, let's go to the supermarket. Then you got to get your kids, and you got to bundle them up, and then you got to put seatbelts on, and it takes like 3 hours.
Yeah, they have to stop at every gas station along the way to pee. It takes forever.
And then kids start crying like, I'm hungry, and then you got to stop and eat. And
it's hot. It's hot there. So you don't want to do any like serious traveling when it's super hot. It's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You get chafing going on. It's not good.
So you can't walk during the day, and then at night it's hard to see. So you can only really go a couple of feet at a time.
Yeah, and you're sleepy, so you take a break.
So what I found was disturbing is actually what they did during the Exodus. And it's one of those things, like, I've read parts of the Bible. I didn't sit down and read it all the way through as a kid. And we're Catholics, so like when you go to Mass, they'll read excerpts from the Bible. And I'm not sure if they didn't mention this in some of the passages reading, but the Jews did some crazy stuff during Exodus. And I'm not talking about the golden calf. That was pretty mild. So what they did was between the pyramids and Israel, they murdered and killed a whole bunch of people, and we're talking probably in the millions.
Mm-hmm.
And they would go to towns, and they'd be like, Moses would be like, God orders these savages, not those words exactly, that don't believe in God to be killed, and you could take their possessions. So they would murder the men, the women, the children, and basically decimate or, kill off everybody that lives in those cities, and then steal their stuff. Mm-hmm. And it blows my mind. People are allowed to believe what they want, but I never talked to a Jewish person about it. So what they believe in, what they believe as stories, may be different from what I think. But basically, they caused a Holocaust between Egypt to Israel, and not in just one town, but 20 something towns.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. It's something like. Because I always assumed that the Jews were these poor, oppressed people. They're like the Charlie Brown of religion. And what I mean by that is, whenever they think life is going to go their way, they get kicked down. They miss the football. They get their friends bullying him, right? They're not the popular religion with the rest of the people around them.
Right, and what you said, I've never talked to a Jewish person about their beliefs or teachings or anything like that either. Right. So, maybe they have very different versions of these stories to some degree, but, I don't really know how that works. talking about the Old Testament. So I am a Christian,
Mm-hmm.
and I've read the entire New Testament. Every time I try to read the Old Testament, it's just number one, the writing is very Old Testament-y.
Yeah, it's sort of like reading Shakespeare. It's like,
Yeah. It's really hard to wade through. And the best I can, the way I, so there's a lot of stuff in the Old Testament, like you said, that is way out there.
mhm.
And the best way that I wrap my head around that part of the Bible is that it was a totally different time, and you know, it's circumstances that I just don't understand. Um, I mean, God had to be pretty mad at everybody if he told Noah, "Build a boat, I'm wiping everybody out." You know? The
Yeah,
world, it had to be a pretty messed up place.
and the thing was, it wasn't just the people. It was like, screw all those other cats, but two. Like, like
You're all right. Everybody else, not so
yeah,
much.
yeah, yeah. Like those zebras, when they heard their names, because they would be at the back of the list, so they have to wait through all the other animals being called. They're like, yes, they picked Dan, the girl that I like, the zebra that I like, and me. Oh, and now she'll have to get with me because I'm the last zebra on Earth. So
Yeah, it's it's a way different time back then. And I just, frankly, I feel like there's a lot of parts of the Bible that, if they really are written under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit,
mhm.
um, who's to say they weren't written just to get a point across? And
Right.
I don't think the Bible is like 100%. This
Literal.
is,
Right.
yeah, literal, exactly. And following those lines, man wrote the thing, so it's definitely fallible in those regards.
And there's another way to think about it. Like we have like three deities in one, right?
Hmm.
So we sort of have the Old Testament where God's sort of the angry person, right? Sort of vengeful and stuff. Then you sort of have Jesus, which is sort of like the hippie of the group, like peace, love, and all that stuff. We don't really know. Maybe the Holy Spirit is sort of like the dick of the Trinity. Like just he's like, yeah, write this. Screw those people. Maybe he's like, yeah, you know what the story needs? It needs some incest. Yeah. Make the daughter screw the father. Yeah, that's some good stuff. I mean, it's just
Well, like the whole world, even like on a molecular level, has balance. You have protons, neutrons, and electrons. So it's like, sure, I get it.
the Trinity of the personalities of our deity that we worship as God, right? One of the
Yeah.
things that when I was still really religious when I was younger, somebody said this, and it blew my mind, and I thought, no, this is what makes sense. And that was the Old Testament God and the New Testament God were two different gods. And I don't know how I justified that in my mind, because that didn't make any sense with Jesus worshiping the old God. But I was like, yeah. Get like this vengeful, jerkish person, but if it's God that, is all knowing, all powerful, all caring, or whatever, he seems quite different, after Jesus. Maybe when Jesus was born, maybe God had a change of heart, which, it's sort of weird for an internal being that knows everything that's going to happen to have a change of heart. But he does have a change of hearts quite often in the Bible. Like, God's like, screw this town. I want to, like, just decimate it. Like, nobody's going to survive. The cats, the babies, everyone's going to be dead. And, the prophet be like, well, what if we find, 100 good people? God's like, well, 100 good people, I suppose. And not to stereotype, but it seems like a Jewish stereotype. Like, he gets bargained down to, like, saving a town because he finds two good people. It's like bargaining for people's lives. It's weird.
Yeah, they're weird stories. They're tough to wrap your brain around a lot of times. There's I don't know. I really just like I said, like the Old Testament to me, I just kind of take it as something I don't really understand and kind of put more stock in the New Testament being important in my
Right.
life.
Well, I mean, for me, I think overall Christians in general would be best served by focusing just basically on Jesus,
Right.
and
Right.
the stories of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and said, okay, this is going to be our stories. Screw the other stuff. Like I get like the prequel, the history, the mythos before Jesus came, but this is what we got to focus on, and then maybe even stop there and say like, this whole fire and brimstone and the end of the world stuff, we shouldn't have to worry about that, and just worry about this.
Well, and actually, like when you talk about the fire and brimstone, like in the New Testament, like Revelations kind of takes a weird turn too. Like I feel like most of the New Testament is pretty, good life lessons and stuff, and then it's like I feel like I'm trying to remember who they say wrote Revelations, but I feel like he probably dropped acid before he wrote
Well,
that book.
well, he was put into a prison and a secluded prison for quite a long time. So you never know what kind of mushrooms might have grown in that prison. It's just like, oh, I'm starving. They don't feed me here. Oh, there's some mushrooms. That's right.
So, and by the way, I'm probably going to hell for telling that joke just now.
Well, I mean, and this thing is like, I don't take the Bible literally. So there's a lot of studies that show like, um, Revelations was basically about the Romans, right? So like, screw the Romans for treating us so bad, blah blah blah. I'm in prison, and then he wrote the book. So like
Mm.
Nero, 666, all that stuff. Actually, I remember when I was working at Myers, and I worked at the meat department, and I had this couple ask for like some ground chuck, and so I put it on the scale, and of course it gets to 6 pounds and 66 of a pound or something. I don't know how that
Right.
decimal works, but
0.66 of a pound, yes.
yeah. So 666, and they're like, and I'm looking at them, and I'm thinking, it doesn't matter, but I know it will matter. So I just grabbed a little bit and put a little bit more. I was like, oh, it's over. Okay. And I'm thinking, okay, I mean, even being very religious, what would that do? That would allow the devil to get into the hamburger and then cause food poisoning? Or, I mean, I know
So,
people get
no.
really superstitious about it, but like,
I was going to say that's more superstition than it is religion,
right.
because that wouldn't bother me for a minute. Um, I I think the long and short of it, like I think so many people put um, just these like dire circumstances on religion, and I think a lot of times that's where we wind up with these horrible, tragedies with mass shootings in the name of religion and things
Right.
like that. People put too much pressure on themselves, think there's too much pressure involved with being a Christian when all it really means is to, obey the teachings of Jesus Christ and try not to be an asshole here on earth.
Yeah.
Really, that's what it comes down to.
And I think it comes down to a simple message from Jesus. I think everyone could agree with. Jesus is like, don't be a dick. That's
Right.
his message. He's just like, like, oh, these people are prostitutes. They're like, okay, they're prostitutes, but don't be a dick to them. Or these guys, people are tax collectors. Yeah, they're sort of jerks, but don't be a dick to them. Just be nice to everyone. What's wrong with that?
Right. It shouldn't be a hard concept to grasp, but it seems to be this day and age.
Oh, so we're talking about 666 being superstition. If you went to Vegas and there was a slot machine and the grand prize was like, let's say, $5 million, and that's when it goes 666 for you to win that prize, would you play that slot machine? Like knowing that if you win those millions of dollars, that money, and money is often associated with the devil. not necessarily saying that it is bad or good, but would you play that slot machine knowing that like your fortune might come from 666?
I, I don't know. I don't think I would really have a problem with it. I
Well,
don't
of course,
really.
you'd probably be several million dollars richer. So
Well, I don't really play slot machines all that often, but I don't think it would bother me. I really don't. So
so you would play.
yeah, I don't think it would bother me. It comes down to more of a superstition thing, and I get away from superstitions more and more as I'm an adult. Now, as I was a younger person, and I think we've touched on this before, I certainly had a tinge of the old OCD going on,
Right.
and I like a lot of kind of ritual things I had to do, but I totally don't do any of that anymore. I don't have time. I'm a parent, of young children. Like you have no time to be superstitious or OCD at that point.
Do you teach your kids any superstition, like dropping salt or nothing? Like don't
No.
walk under a ladder.
No, no. In fact, actually, my boy, I had him go under a ladder today for me on purpose. I told him to go in.
Well, I think the whole superstition with the ladder thing was have to do with safety, but
Well, this was one of those, fold out
yeah, yeah.
A-frame ladders. Like it was a safe ladder.
So is there any superstition that it's a superstition, but you're like, hey, like it might be superstition, but it's good advice still, nonetheless.
You know what? Actually, now that we're talking about this, I did knock on wood today. And I don't even know where that superstition comes from. So why I did that, I'm not sure. And I do that once in a while if
Right.
wood's handy. I was standing I was standing in the side yard talking to the neighbor, and my son is just getting over like a pretty bad cold.
Right.
So he's sniffling, and he's got still got a pretty good cough going, So we're running around the side yard, me and my two kids and their kids, and he's coughing and hacking all over the place. And
Right.
my neighbor brought up, oh man, that's a bad sounding cough. And I said, yeah, the whole family's getting over it. Rachel had it first, and she gave it to my wife. And Rachel's my youngest daughter, by the way.
Yeah.
And he gave it to my wife, and then
Not just some random kid just giving you viruses.
yeah. And then Jacob, my son, got it from her. And I said, but knock wood. And there was a tree right there. So sure enough, I knocked on it. I haven't got it yet. And
that tree is really defending you.
Right, exactly. Like there's no reason for me to do that ever. But, I don't know. It was one of those things. I did feel lucky that I didn't get that cold because we went up north last weekend. So sort of the time when Jacob would have been totally coming down with it and contagious, I was shut up in a car with him for 3 hours, going up north, and then again for another 3 hours coming home.
With the windows down, just getting the airflow away from you.
Oh yeah, it was too. It was kind of a warm day, so we had the air on.
Okay, so one of the superstitions that people do in America and somewhere in Europe is when you sneeze, you say,
God bless you.
Yeah. In Japan, they do nothing. And it's a little awkward at first.
Okay.
Somebody will sneeze.
So I don't think that's really a superstition so much as it is being polite at this point.
Well, it is being polite, but it stems from a superstition. Like you would sneeze, that your spirit would exit your body, and you say "bless you," and it's like stuff right back up your nose or something like that.
Right, and I understand the origin of it, but I still do it. But like I said, it's not superstition; it's more out of courtesy at this point.
Okay.
So, like, if I moved to Japan and we didn't say it, it'd be like awesome. One less thing I have to do. That's.
Well, I mean, it's like what is a politeness thing, right? So when someone sneezes, it just automatically I want to say God bless you. Of course, it would mean nothing to those people who work with. They were like,
they'd really be
blah 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 blah. Like, okay, but regardless of that fact, it just you sort of get like this sort of uneasy discontent because you said nothing. You just like, am I being rude? I feel like I'm being rude because I just ignore the fact that they just sneeze. And then it gets me thinking, when someone coughs, where maybe you should really say something because like coughing is a good sign of you're sick and you might be unhealthy, unlike sneezing, which could be just allergies or anything like that. When someone coughs, we don't say anything. We aren't trained like, God bless you. Right? So when he coughs, we don't say anything.
In fact, you're more likely to like go running away from that person because you don't want to get sick,
Right. So I don't know why it's in my head like, someone sneezed. I really should be polite and say something. And someone coughs. I'm like, well, whatever. Like, I don't care.
So what were some of the other sort of really big changes when you moved over there? I mean, obviously you have the language barrier and but I assume there were a lot of things that when you first moved there were just like totally different.
Well, I told you before that unless you're living in Tokyo, Japan's not necessarily the most advanced country in the world. I have to send in like my work reports through fax machines. I mean, sometimes I could email it, but like, it's sort of backwards having to use paper to send, information electronically.
That's kind of weird, being that Japan creates some of these awesome like inventions that we see over here stateside that
Right.
the rest of the country is kind of lagging behind.
Now, see, I just had this argument with my wife. One of the things that you do when you signed a receipt or something like this in America is you use your signature, right? This is your proof of identity. And in Japan, you use something called a hanko, which is like a cylinder with your seal, right? And then maybe you've seen those old Asian movies where they will like stamp something, or even in England, like in the old times, if they're
with like wax or
whatever,
they have a stamp that they stamp with, yeah.
Right, and that's what Japanese people tend to do. They use these hankos for official business. Sometimes when you're paying bills or proof that you paid something or you make some kind of deal. I don't know. You don't use the signature. You use the hanko, and the hanko is what they use to prove that it belongs to something, or it's something that you sign. And I think, for me personally, I don't like this system. It's annoying having to remember to bring your hanko. My wife brings hers everywhere, and I was always told you keep it locked in a safe because once somebody got your hanko, you basically got your signature, and they could just stamp this, stamp that, stamp this. Hey man, you signed it. It's can't argue that. So I don't think it's a safer system. But
yeah, what is crime in relation over there?
Oh, a lot lower.
That's what I figured. So you're probably worried less about someone robbing you for that.
Oh yeah, I mean, theft in Japan is incredibly low. In fact, I just read an article like a couple months ago. They were talking about the like hundreds of millions of dollars returned to the police station because people found money. They're like, oh, this is about $10,000. Better send that to the police station because someone might be missing it. I don't know if even really devout Christians coming across, small or large sums of money would think, I should go to the police instead of, I need to go to the bank and deposit this in a safe place,
Well, I mean, obviously the rate is going to be much higher over here for people to do that, but there's still good people over here for sure.
Oh, no, I'm not. I think it's just the mentality. Like, in Japan, if it doesn't belong to you, of course, you turn it in, or somebody might be missing it. In America, we're a little bit more individualistic, so we might not. And it's weird too, because I think even I think it's sort of the culture, like littering in America, while I wouldn't say is prevalent, it's much higher than some other countries or whatever. And you come to Japan and you'll notice like people will instantly change the way they handle litter littering. Like, you know, in Korea is like a very deep contrast. Like in Korea, like people they don't have trash cans where you just throw away your trash, right? And because of that, the effect in Korea is people will start making piles of trash. And it's like this blows my mind what Korea is doing. But and so I'll go out drinking and I'll drink a bottle, all right? And then I have no place to put this bottle. And while I'm walking down the street, I'll see a pile of trash, and I'll add my bottle to that pile of trash because there's no trash cans to put that bottle in. And then over the course of a night, you get this huge piles of trash in certain areas of Seoul, and it really is just a goddamn mess. I don't really know what Korea is doing, but somewhere around like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, a bunch of ajumas, like these older Japanese women, sometimes men, they would go down the street and they'll sweep up and collect all the trash, and then like around 6 or 7 o'clock, it's spotless. Like it's cleaner than most streets in America. Like they just, it's like a swarm of Korean locusts just taking up all the trash, and it's clean. And then the cycle would begin because later in the day, someone's like, I have a bottle. What do I do? I'll set it here. And then somebody else will have a bottle. Like, I need to get rid of this bottle. Oh, there's a bottle here, so I'll set my bottle here or my trash here. And then it will pile up. And it's just like a cycle of boom and bust of trash.
Yeah.
Man, it's strictly you take the trash home. Like you eat a sandwich, there's no trash can, you put it in your pocket, you put it in your bag, and you take it home, and then you sort it out, and then you recycle it. And it's even to the point where you're walking down the street and you see trash, you'll pick up that trash and then take that trash home and recycle it because you don't want a messy town, and it's your responsibility as a Japanese person or a person living in Japan to keep the roads clean. And that's what they do. And it works quite well in Japan because they got pretty clean streets.
Yeah, I feel like you can teach a population to act any way you want it to for the most part. Now, I'm not sure where America went astray with all this. Like, we're just raising these generations of people who just don't care about our country. We have Donald Trump as like a realistic candidate for election right now, and all he does on a regular basis is get up there and preach hate. Like, it's insane to me that he's still hanging around.
Yeah, except for I totally disagree with you on your philosophy of young people. I honestly believe that every generation you get more tolerant, more sane, more educated people, at least in America. So it's been seeming for me for quite a long time. I mean, you got America first starting off treating people pretty badly. Blacks had a disadvantage. And while we still see cases of cops killing minorities, and you read all this stuff in the news about women being raped and mistreated and all this horrible stuff, I do believe that in almost every case, it's much better if you look at the statistics of like gun violence, smoking, rapes, murders. Like one of the things that in Fox News that they keep on talking about is the war on cops. But 2015 is the least violent time in American history against cops. Like for the last 20 years, it's been a decline in cop killing. And this year it's been the least amount of cops killed.
So, yay, America, we have less cops killed this year than previous years. Well, yeah. Meanwhile, we still had a ton of them. But yeah, less than 10 minutes ago, we just had the conversation about how Japan and everywhere else is not even close to America on a crime scale. So, we're doing something wrong. This generation of young people that we're talking about just keeps making this country worse.
Well, I think what it is, when somebody does something wrong in America 50 years ago, if you don't live in that state or that city or maybe even that neighborhood, you wouldn't hear about it, right? But when anybody even tweets something wrong on the other side of the world, you can hear about it in America. So of course we're always being inundated with a whole bunch of news, and usually news is negative, right? So it seems that
Well,
way. But I think
well, that's
overall,
we just talked about the crime rate being insanely high here in America. So
oh no,
whether
it's nowhere near what it should be. Don't get me wrong. I think, we should
right.
hear about gun violence as often in Japan. Like, I've heard about one murder, and that's because it was in the city that I was in. Like, and it happened, like, I think the year before I arrived in Japan, and there was this woman who was killed at an onsen. It was like a secluded backwoods onsen, right? And she died. And this was huge news for like 2 or 3 years, and I didn't really hear anything else. Now, of course, I don't speak fluent Japanese, so of course there's a lot of things happening in Japan that I don't hear about. So that's part of the reason why. But when you
Wow.
hear about a murder or a kidnapping or whatever, it's much less frequent in Japan than in America. But of
Right.
course, Japan's
And
not as big as America too.
that's what I'm talking about, though. Is well, when you want to talk about size wise, like I still own a house in Flint, and I was there last night
Yeah.
because number one, like this is a thing now in Flint. You can't drink the water, so I
Wait,
had to
at
take.
all?
No, it's got extremely high lead content right now in the city water. So,
My mom gets Flint city water. I should talk to her.
well, I'm sure she knows about it. It's a big
Okay.
story around here. But so, anyways, the house that I still own in Flint, I took the tenants. We bought,
Right.
faucet water filter things for them because they have 2 kids and stuff like that, and we felt bad. So we bought those for them and took them up there. And it's like I just remember before we left. I mean, we would hear gunshots and stuff on a I don't know semi-regular basis. There was a murder a street over from us.
Right.
So you're talking about one murder happens, anywhere near you, and you hear about it all over the place. Well, guess what? Flint's working on 100 some murders already this year, and and that's a city of what 200,000.
Right. People get desensitized to it. It's almost like you go back in the reverse trend where the more murders you have, the less you hear about it because they're like, oh, another murder, another day.
So we're doing something wrong over here that murder is okay.
Right.
You're hearing about these school shootings all the times now.
Right.
Um,
Well, there's always been a whole lot of school shootings. We just don't necessarily hear about them.
well, that's a bad situation too. Like if you're going to, and this sounds really bad, but somewhere we made the leap from I really don't like myself and I want to kill myself to I'm going to take 30 people with me when I go.
So, you want to go back to the good old days when people would just kill
Well,
themselves?
that's not what I'm saying at all. But I'm saying I don't. We seem to be just evolving in how horrible of things we can do
Well,
as a
I feel
country.
like I think it's that kind of old saying, like misery loves company, and like if you're gonna go out, you might as well go out with a whole bunch of other people. I'm
Yeah.
not saying that's a good philosophy to have, but it's a lot easier, I think, now, maybe, to get weapons that could kill people. But I'm not exactly sure because, like, back in the day, they used to have kids used to be able to get guns, I think, pretty easily as well.
Yeah,
And
well, yeah, there was a time in this country where when you were like 10 years old, you started hunting for food, like and somehow that turned into a 14-year-old gets a gun and wants to shoot somebody with it.
right, I remember my mom. She told me this story when she was a teacher at sort of I think it was like downtown Flint. I'm not exactly sure where she was a teacher when this happened, but she was teaching I think junior high school kids at the time. And one of the students came up to her and said, like, Mr. Scene, like, Jimmy has a gun. He brought a gun to school. And my mom thinking, what the hell are you talking about? Like, okay, I'll get to the bottom of this one, right? Like, kids starting to spread rumors or I don't know. And she goes up to Jimmy all casually. It's like, Jimmy, I heard you brought a gun to school. And then Jimmy looks at her and is like, yeah. And my mom's like, in her mind, she's like, holy shit, what do I do? She's like, I'll need you to bring me that gun. And then he went to his locker and gave her the gun. And then they went to the principal, and of course, he probably got expelled. I don't really know exactly what happened to him, but it was like a non-event.
Right.
I don't really know what was the motivation for this kid to bring a gun to school. It probably wasn't a mass shooting. It was more like, I was being intimidated by this bully, and I'll show this kid, not to mess with me, kind of thing. But we still had gun problems back in the day.
Right.
Maybe
Well,
it didn't make headlines.
I suspect it has a little bit to do with if somebody starts intimidating you as a kid, you're not supposed to just punch them in the face anymore.
Right.
Like, that's not okay either.
Because you get expelled.
Yeah. So what do? You flash a gun at the kid, to try to, I don't know. I don't really know what the answer is, but I know there was a time in this country where gun ownership was okay and you could teach your kids to shoot as a utility, much less so as a look how powerful I am, I own a gun. And it's still not like that in a lot of places. And we need to change the culture in this country.
Well, I mean, change the culture, obviously, but I mean, I think there's just some things that we could do right now. I don't know why it's not a law that whoever owns the gun is responsible for anything that happens with the gun. So I think basically right now, like we have laws that exempt manufacturers and people who sell guns from the effects of someone shooting. Like, so, if you're a gun shop owner and you sell a gun to someone and then they commit a mass shooting, as long as you went through whatever security, like legally, I think you can't be sued. And yeah, I understand why you sort of have this law, but there's also a point of limit. Like, if you're selling a gun to a guy, right, and he asks for, let's say, 10,000 rounds, you might go like, what the hell are you doing with that much ammo, right? There's sensible, like, even with cheese. If I'm a cheese shop owner and someone's like, I need 500 tons of cheese, I'm gonna be like, what the fuck is going on? I can't imagine a situation where you use cheese as a weapon. Something is not right. Like, if you need that much cheese, something is going on that I need to know. I need to be aware of.
I feel like most things, like if you just let them decompose for long enough, they start emitting harmful fumes of some sort. So you probably could do that with cheese. I don't know how long it would have to sit there. And I'm not sure how you would bottle this toxic vapor and weaponize it.
Weaponizing cheese.
Maybe that's something we need to look into.
I'm very much a pacifist, but if there was a war of cheese, I might join. I might sign up. It's like, oh no, I'm going to attack my brie.
One thing's for sure, it'd be the most delicious war of all time.
Yeah.
All right. So Jeff is gone. We've made this the most serious what do we know I think we've maybe ever had. Right. So let's wrap it up here with cheese talk. Let's go back to cheese. What's your favorite kind of cheese, Mark?
I like probably sharp cheddar.
By the way, what's the cheese situation in Japan? Is it just kind of you can get whatever?
Well, Mike, down here in Japan, I was going to have to say that really the cheese situation is quite awful. Like,
oh no,
they got like mozzarella, and you actually get Kraft cheese, but overall, Japan doesn't have that many gourmet cheese shops. You can get cheese, you can get brie, you can get some fancy cheese every once in a while, but you're paying top dollar, and it's expensive. So
why is it so expensive? You don't have cows, or
Japan's love of cheese is quite lower. And at first I want to say that Asians tend to have more lactose intolerance, right, than the West, because they evolved, or whatever you want to say, adapted to drinking milk much later than the Western cultures. But that's a bunch of bullshit because every day at school, I drink milk. Every single meal that these Japanese students have has milk, and they're required to drink it. So it can't be a lactose intolerance, or there'd be shit everywhere at my schools. I mean, it would just be a goddamn mess. I mean, it would be just gas and poo and just awfulness.
Oh.
But
You could bottle that methane and weaponize it somehow, I'm sure.
yeah, I'm sure. But as far as I can tell, they just don't like cheese as often as in America. They're just not as cheese crazy, and it might be just that it's slowly leaking into Japanese culture, but it's slow to adapt. Like in America, Indian food, go to a curry restaurant is a lot harder to find. In Japan, you could there's a lot more curry restaurants that I could go to than I could in Michigan, which is strange, I think, because there's not.
I guess now that you mention it, all the times I've eaten at any kind of, Asian style restaurant, like there's not really any cheese for the most part. Like I guess you have like crab cheese kind of.
The ragoons and stuff?
Yeah.
Those are all American. That was never existed in China.
Yeah, I was going to say that definitely reeks of Americanized Chinese food to me. But like when you think sushi and stuff like that, like you think of, Japan, you guys probably eat a lot of fish and stuff like that. Yeah. So when you think sushi and things of that nature, there's never any cheese in that.
Right. So yeah, Asia, I would tend to say less popular with the cheese, even with pizza, because I think cheese costs so much in Japan. Like eating pizza is a fortune. I like when I go to Costco, I try to eat pizza there because it's much cheaper. I think like a medium size, and what I mean by medium size in Japan is like a small size pizza costs somewhere between $20 to $25, and then to get larger than that, you're going to the 30s and 40s. And these aren't necessarily like, oh, this is the fanciest restaurant pizza. This is just pizza that you get in Japan. So,
wow, and I guess that makes sense because I've been to Maui, Hawaii, and it's the same sort of situation. Like, everything has to be imported because it's an island, and so everything. A gallon of milk there was like, $7.50 or something like that. Like it was really expensive. Whereas I can go to the store now and buy it for under $3 most of the time.
Let me ask you a question because I've been trying to keep up with the news. How is the 24-hour breakfast at McDonald's going? They haven't moved that culture over to Japan yet, but all day breakfast, all lunch breakfast, all dinner. Doesn't matter.
I was going to say, to be perfectly honest, I've kind of trying to been working on dropping some pounds, and frankly, I just don't ever have a McDonald's breakfast. Like I don't remember the last time when I had McDonald's breakfast was. So, I can't tell you that I went to a McDonald's, for lunch and they were ordering breakfast. Like I really don't know how it's going, to be honest with you. All I see are the commercials for it. Well, they're really pushing it hard, but
Brenner?
Yeah, I don't really know if it's going well or not. I mean, I guess like people like breakfast all the time, so maybe it'll be okay.
Well, I would say for McDonald's, their lunch and dinner, I think is just mediocre at best.
Yeah.
Breakfast, I would say, is something I actually enjoyed at McDonald's. Like, if you wanted to go out to McDonald's for breakfast, I'd be like, oh, okay. If you want to go for lunch or dinner, I'm just more reluctant, right? But you and I both worked at McDonald's, and one of the reasons why they stopped making breakfast around lunchtime is people order the food less. And knowing how McDonald's work with retaining its freshness, would you really want to eat breakfast if it's not very popular in
No, I absolutely would not. You're absolutely right. And that was the first thing I thought when I saw this, because a peek behind the curtain at McDonald's culture, and I can only speak for the McDonald's that we worked at. obviously. This is a disclaimer. I'm not going to say this is how it is at every McDonald's
No,
on the planet.
we are.
I'm not going to say that. But so basically they have these and again, this goes back quite a ways. So maybe they've changed things. I guess I should say that. I don't really know if this is how it goes now. But they had these warming trays where you would cook all this volume of meat. You could usually be prepared for rushes. You kind of knew when they were coming, and you would cook all this food in preparation. And a lot of times during that rush, obviously there was a lot of turnover on the product. So it would only sit in this rack for a limited time. However, when that rush ended and there's 20 hamburger patties still in that warming thing, and you're only going to sell 20 hamburger patties in the next hour and a half,
Right.
that last person to buy one at the end of that hour and a half is getting a really old hamburger patty that's just been sitting in this warmer for a long time.
Right.
So yes, that was exactly what jumped into my head is I'm going to be getting, an Egg McMuffin that has been sitting there for 3.5 hours.
Right.
So I don't know. I hate to bring on a lawsuit from McDonald's for talking this way. Wait, this might be the last podcast we ever do. We might get shut.
What's true though? I remember because they even have a timer where it would beep, and this beep would tell you this product is no longer fresh, and this is 20 minutes after you cook it, right? It would warn you, beep, beep, beep. This is no longer fresh. Bacteria could start growing. It may cause food poisoning. This person may die if they consume this hamburger. And I remember what I used to do. I'm just like, oh, it's beeping. Boink. 20 minutes more. And then you get to the point where you're using 3 or 4 different trays, right? And it's beeping, and you're pressing this button, and you're like, first time, 5th time, I'm not quite sure. I want to press it again, because theoretically what you're supposed to do is beep, beep, beep. Okay, take this meat out of the tray, and then throw it into the waste, because that's dangerous. And this is what McDonald's says, food regulatory-wise, you need to do. But there's no way, unless being you're prophetic and you can see the future, and you're like, we're going to have 6 customers within the next 20 minutes make 6 hamburger patties. You have to always make sure that there's enough, because it takes 2 whole minutes or something like that to cook a hamburger patty, and that would, people don't wait 2 minutes for a hamburger.
Right.
They 2 minutes.
I was going to say you'd be completely surprised to learn how angry people get if they have to wait 2 minutes for their double cheeseburger.
Right, and you're the cook, right? So you, in theory, should care. But the people at the windows, they actually have a stopwatch for every single customer, and they have to make sure their time is under a certain amount of time before they can, or they'll get into trouble. And that's why, when you pull up and you want a grilled chicken or something like that, and grilled chicken is something that you shouldn't order at McDonald's because
it's never
fresh. I mean, you're risking your life every single time you order a grilled chicken, really. Unless
those things could have been sitting there for
if they don't tell you to pull over to the side because they have to make that grilled chicken, retract that grilled chicken order. It's for your own damn safety.
Well, no. When they tell you to pull over, it means they had to cook another one. So
yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I'm saying. If they don't tell you to pull over, you're risking your life, right?
Yeah, ask for it fresh for sure.
Right. Always
fresh. 5 minutes. It's worth it.
If you want really good fries, ask for non-salted fries, because then they have to make it fresh.
They have to
and then ask for salt packets so you can spit in their faces.
You know what? We should have saved this for a McDonald's tips and tricks podcast. We definitely should have done that.
But yeah, McDonald's, if it's almost time, within an hour of them closing, don't go to McDonald's. just I mean, in general, you shouldn't go to McDonald's, but
a lot of McDonald's don't close now.
Yeah, which then they don't even know what the cutoff is. That's when you get really dangerous, because if you're going there at 10 o'clock and it's not busy, what do you think? Do you think every 20 minutes they're cooking one hamburger and then throwing it away? One hamburger, throwing it away? I
Right.
mean, of course, I say this, and I'm sure it's true every place that you go to eat, like uh, Taco Bell. I can only imagine the horrors because they as far as I can tell, and this is me looking over the counter trying to see what's going on behind the counter, right? So my view is limited. But like I think like the shredded meats and the Taco Bell meats, it just sits in a vat of oil, right? And maybe it's at a high enough temp where bacteria
Like
can't
constant
grow.
cooking or something.
Yeah. So maybe it's safe, but as far as I can tell, like it's something like you cook, you turn on the machine in the morning, and that meat's good to go until the rest of the night. Actually, that's how we used to do. I think that's actually where almost every restaurant does, like chili. Like you get Wendy's chili or McDonald's chili. You turn on the hot crock and you put the chili from
Sits
the
there.
prepackaged machine into and then whenever anybody orders it, you just pour a bowl.
Yeah. Hopefully somebody remembers to stir it throughout the day a couple times.
Yeah, same.
Nobody
I
ever.
do it every single time I throw away the meat patties.
Yeah, right. Well, they actually say that soups are one of the most dangerous things you can eat from a restaurant because most of the time they have been sitting at a temperature that is a lot of times like below a safe temperature to be stored at.
Right.
And it's been stored that way for a long period of time. So, yeah, I don't know. There were a lot of inside things we saw in the fast food world, which, by the way, is not exclusive to McDonald's. I'm sure it happens everywhere.
Right.
But it definitely turns you off to the idea of eating fast food.
Actually, we always used you get free meals if you work after a certain amount of hours. I think at McDonald's. Actually, you get a free meal whenever you work at McDonald's, but you get a nicer meal if you work after a certain amount of time. But knowing the horribleness of what you're creating never deterred me from getting my free meal. Like,
I always ate.
Damn it.
By the way, I always got creative with stuff I would make. Like I made chicken breakfast omelets with salsa and peppers and onions and all this stuff. Like I totally created new inventions there.
It's actually really surprising all this different stuff that they have in McDonald's that you don't usually eat normally. Like the fajitas. I don't know if they still even sell fajitas in McDonald's.
I was actually just going to say, now that I think about it, that breakfast burritos thing I made with the salsa, it had the fajita meat in it because that was really delicious.
Right?
But yeah, nobody even knows those things exist, and they were really good back then.
I think Jeff's the one that kept on saying that we had a huge package of barbecue sauce, and I don't know if that was from the McRib or whatever, but we had this huge package of sauce that what's it there for? Who knows? How long it's been there?
Who knows?
When the McRib comes back, we're prepared.
Didn't they have it seems? Do you remember the tubes? So they basically had, if you've ever done any sort of interior work on a home, they basically had caulk guns that had mayonnaise and. I thought there was a barbecue sauce one too, but maybe I'm wrong.
I don't remember. No, because for the McRib, we had to ladle it, or you.
Yeah, maybe.
No, actually, this talks about the safety of the food at McDonald's.
Oh, it wasn't.
McRib,
no,
there was a tray of barbecue sauce, and then you would cook the McRib and put the McRib in the tray of barbecue sauce. But that's not safe, obviously, because you're taking cooked meat, putting it in barbecue sauce, and then you're using that barbecue sauce throughout the whole freaking day. So I can only imagine, near the end of the day, that's got to be poison.
I forgot the ketchup and mustard were actually in a plastic thing with it.
Yeah, it was like a
trigger.
I don't know what to call it. It's
I don't either. It basically looked like
cylinder with a tube.
It looked like a giant funnel is what it looked like, but it had the end was plugged up, and you had to hit this trigger thing on the handle to make it squirt ketchup and mustard. But I seem to recall we had two of the like caulk gun things. One of them was mayonnaise for sure. What was the other one? Do you remember?
The mayonnaise, Big Mac sauce, and tartar sauce.
There you go. There you go. That's what they were.
And
And by the way, I was just going to say, I remember those just sort of sat out all day, right?
well, they did.
And then
And
we
I don't
wrapped them
know,
up with, put cellophane on the end of them and stuck them in a fridge overnight, and then we used them the next day.
what I remember mostly, besides like you're creating food using a caulk gun, because that's what it. I mean, he's not kidding. It was a caulk gun.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
But I remember like you would grab it, and sometimes your hand would slip, and the device would fall down, land at the caulk loader area, and it would use its full force and squirt just mayonnaise freaking everywhere, and the whole place would just be covered in mayonnaise. You're like, you just. But then you have to sort of keep going because you're in a hurry, and like you clean up slowly as you go by. But it's just sort of like a mess for a really long time once it happens. And I remember Jeff. He used to be a closer at McDonald's, and him and Kathy, I think, they would have, or maybe Amber or whatever, they would have fights using these caulk guns. Like they'll be cleaning up and then they'll be like, squirt, squirt, squirt. It's like a battlefield at McDonald's using those things.
Oh, we had a lot of fun after hours at McDonald's. I wish Jeff was here for this conversation. We did a lot of crazy stuff at McDonald's. We had WrestleManias in the ball pit area, like the play area on the front of some of the McDonald's stores.
Well,
us as semi-grown adults, I guess I use that term loosely because we were 17, 18,
right.
Somewhere in that range. But yeah, we'd have WrestleMania in the ball pit, and we would play hockey with brooms and the tops to the salt shaker for the French fries. We'd play hockey in the lobby area. And actually, that was because I had closing down to such a science. I remember specifically on this, I got in trouble once because I closed in 8 minutes. Like I was, you were done in 8 minutes, and I was gone.
Right, because people are really going to believe that you cleaned up the whole place, very well in 8 minutes.
Right. Well, everything was clean before I closed the store. Like you remember how we did it.
Yeah.
We started cleaning early. But yeah, I got in trouble for being done so fast. So I was never done that fast ever again, for sure. And it just turned into, all right, we're done in 8 minutes. Now what do we do for the next 22 minutes so I don't get in trouble again,
That's really teaching responsibility, right? It's like, this is what I get for being quick and efficient.
Yeah, exactly. Like I thought I did a pretty good job at it. I just did it faster than everybody else.
I could see the manager's like, Mike, you're really just making everyone look bad for you. Gotta really stop that shit. Trying to save me money? Come on.
And what's really funny is that back then, like I remember thinking, wow, my boss is really on my case. There's so much pressure going on here. Like, what an easy job that was.
If you could get paid the same amount, would you rather work at McDonald's?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Oh, without a doubt.
See, I don't know if I would say without a doubt, but I remember I used to having a lot of fun at McDonald's. But then it's one of those shit things like, was it really fun, or is that just my memory saying it was fun? Because it was great. I'll admit that I made a lot of friends at McDonald's, and basically if you get to work a job where you're hanging out with your friends, that's gonna be a lot more fun than most other jobs. Fulfilling wise, making people fatter, it's not one of those things where like I put in a good day's work today, and I feel like I accomplished something. Like, you don't really get that sense of pride, but it was fun. I'll give you that.
Right. Well, and so a couple points on that. Like, number one, I work in the steel industry now, and I make seamless tubing that is used for oil field applications and
so you're helping
fracking. So, the fulfilling part of it, I don't know. I don't feel awesome about that.
But you
But
create stuff, even
right,
if
right.
it's used for evil.
Well, a lot of it's used for good too. Well,
Sure,
actually, I make gun barrels too. Like that's part of it. So maybe I am just sort of evil. Anyway, and the other point to that was going to be, so it was really fun to work at McDonald's when we were 16, 17, 18 and worked with all our friends.
Right.
However, if I went back to work there now,
Working
it
with
would
16, 17.
16, 17, 18-year-olds who would drive me completely insane. There's no doubt.
we think you're so with the younger generation now. Could you imagine if every day you get back from work with these kids, like, God damn, they're just beavers in their one direction, I tell you.
Yeah, it would be like over under of 3 months before I came home one day and said, I got fired for punching a 17-year-old.
Well, I mean, okay, one of the McDonald's, the main manager when we worked there was Liz, I remember. And I think she let us get away with a lot of shit. And I think particularly because we were still really good workers. We would goof around a lot, but we would also get our shit done. And she didn't have to go like yell after us too often for missing work or all that stuff. So it was less of a headache. And I think she quit like a couple of years after most of us left. But if I worked at McDonald's and the manager was sort of straight laced, it would have been pretty shitty, I think. So
Well,
it
and
depends on who you work with, the manager.
oh yeah, oh for sure. There were always days when you came in and saw the managers who were there, and I was like, oh.
Yeah. I can think of a couple of managers that I didn't used to like too much. One was very adamant about Star Wars being better than Star Trek. So if they happen to hear that, they could figure it out. But
Well, we shouldn't probably say names, I guess, but I think I know who you're talking about. Is
no, okay, so let me just put it this way. Like, you work with some people that are older. Actually, I can't even remember how old he was. He might have been younger than I am now. But you work at McDonald's and they're older in their manager or assistant manager or something like that. And you're sort of wondering, still, why are you working at McDonald's? Not that I'm as judgmental now as I was when I was a kid. But I was like, this guy's ancient. He's like 30-something. And then, and this is not why I didn't like him. He was sort of, I wouldn't say grab you with the younger female workers, but you could sort of tell he was hitting on them, and I think he got in trouble for hitting on someone in particular. Which that I was thinking that's pretty messed up. And you work with some pretty messed up people at McDonald's, like not necessarily the managers or anything like that, but just coworkers. I remember this girl around my age, and she ended up dating like someone 36, and she was still 16 at the time, maybe younger, 16, 17. We're both in high school, and I remember like I'm working with this girl that's dating someone that she really shouldn't because of the huge age difference. Not too judgmental, but it was illegal.
it was a
at the
huge
time. And then I'm also working with this creep of a guy that's dating someone that's, illegal. It's a little weird to deal with that with such a, immature mind at the time for me.
And I always just tried to have fun with it. Like, so you talked about Liz, and I don't want to say the name, but you remember the person sort of like right under her.
Yeah, I think so.
Very, very straight-laced, just by the book with everything. I would hit on her every time I came into the store.
Well,
Do you remember that at all?
I do remember who she is.
I was
a teenager at that time, if you believe me.
Yeah, she didn't like me for anything because I was who I was,
Right.
and she was so straight-laced and just prim and proper, that sort of person.
It was
I would hit on her all the time, just to make her uncomfortable, and she always was. always was around me.
He made her life miserable, Polly.
Well, and what's funny is I would carry it over to high school too, because she was in our school. She was only a year. I think it was a year older than us.
Oh, really? I thought she was a little older than that.
No, she was definitely in school. I suppose it's possible. Maybe it was just freshman year, but I would hit on her in the halls in high school too. And she definitely didn't like that.
Oh, I bet. Especially coming from you, Polly. Like, all the people I have to work with.
Oh, when I say hit on, it was just sort of like, flirting, like
Right.
just to see her.
Sexual harassment, basically.
Yeah.
Usually it doesn't work with the junior, with the upper, but at McDonald's, crazy things happen.
Yeah, maybe it was a little bit. But no, I was never like inappropriate. I just always would approach her that way, as I had this big crush on her when there was no way that would ever work out in real life. Especially since she couldn't stand me.
Well, I was talking about this younger girl, older guy. It's one of those things that you just mentioned. I would probably never think of to hit on this woman because she was so much older. And it's one of those things, age-wise, if you're a younger person, sometimes you see someone like just 3 years older and you think, this person's like 20 years older in your mind or something equivalent. So yeah, like of course I thought she was attractive. Hitting on her probably wouldn't have, but that's what made me really uncomfortable with.
Cat's out of the bag now.
Yeah. I'll try to bleep that one out, if I can. But yeah, because she was dating someone so much older, and like. It's one of those situations like, I should probably go to the police about this, but it's really none of my damn business. Like, right. I mean, it happens really in life. I was in Thailand teaching, right? And I ended up talking to this teacher where I just thought, this guy's probably here teaching because he's a fucking pedophile. I mean, he's talking about the middle school students that we were freaking teaching being sexy. And I'm thinking, what do you do in this case? Like, I mean, it's a little different where you're in your own country and you know your laws. In Thailand, the laws are a lot looser, I would say. So, and the company that I work for, I don't, it's not going to be my, it's weird. It's just a weird situation. So what do you do in that case? I just sort of, kept my mouth shut and hopefully hope for the best. But I understand people like, well, no, you should go. But I had no evidence. I like, somebody come up to you as a manager at McDonald's and said, like, this guy is a pedophile. Unless you have proof, there's nothing you can really do about it. So.
Right, Yeah.
You can't fire the person on hearsay or whatever, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, so we've got all our McDonald's demons out in the open now.
Wow, this is a very depressing. I'm sorry. This is going to be. This is the most hilarious episode of What Do We Know? We're talking about pedophiles. We're talking about poisoning McDonald's. We're talking about religion.
Jeff will never miss an episode ever again. He'll be too afraid to. We'll teach him a lesson for clogging his toilet.
Yeah.
All right. Are we out of time yet? What's happening?
I think we're good to wrap up. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. We'll try to get Jeff on next time. We'll promise not to talk about,
depressing stuff
the
whole time.
We'll think of happier topics than not reporting possible pedophile cases.
Right. Yeah. I feel like if you stuck through this whole episode, you're a devoted listener, and thank you very much. Because there was a lot to get through and only a handful of funny parts, I think. So.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Yeah. All right. See ya.
Whenever I answer the phone, I'm like, hello.
What pissed you off?
It's a great argument to have.
I love my mom, but I think she's half crazy for doing that.
How dare you?
Do you work with your girlfriend, Mark? Or your wife, Mark?
I keep them separated. Sometimes I call people, they don't answer the phone, I'm like,
Wrong number, click.
Well, he's not that smart. Sometimes he sounds like he knows what he's doing.
yeah.
Go.
Therefore, you're an ass, and I don't want to talk to you anymore.
Yeah, but what do we know?